It's the 6th of October, 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org. And you can call in at 709-589-4406. This is the Nuclear Scumbag Show, episode 1500. I don't know. We got over 1500 for sure. They took down 1600 of my shows last year when we were out looking for spiders. Because that's a crime, obviously. Taiwan's a bit of a crime, isn't it? I mean, we covered Taiwan a lot over the last number of years. 2018, they had the referendum. It was only valid for 2 lousy years. The radiation's good for 1 million. And that's something what they done. We'll show you some of the people that screwed Taiwan. Hi everybody. Thank you for finding the time. Japan, we'll go back to 2018 with this story. Japan disappointed because there's a story that researchers in Taiwan had found cesium in the seawater tables. And they said it can't be from Fukushima. It can't be. It's from 1950s. And you kind of lose your fate when you will lose your fate if you've been around for a while, to see that they lie so easily. But the side effects is poisoning of the population permanently, bioaccumulation of the children and the females, which is we're supposed to protect them at all costs because of the disaster known as nuclear industry. Japan disappointed as Taiwan votes to maintain a Fukushima food ban. Why would you care if Japan wanted to poison you? They're disappointed they couldn't poison the people of Taiwan, is what that actually means. Let's go back. It seems they're talking about the 50s. Let's go back to the 50s for a moment. Pediatrics consideration before, during, and after a radiological or nuclear emergency. Children are likely to experience higher external and internal radiation exposure levels than adults because of their smaller body and smaller organ sizes, as well as the tendency to pick up contaminated items and consume contaminated milk and food stuff. And children can be exposed to environmental radiation as a result of nuclear power. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day. They're still splitting the atoms that were originally boiling power for 1 million homes. The heat from the splitting of the atoms, that's a perpetual machine. See, the atoms don't go away. Every day you have this new batch of assassins that attack everything with replicating cells. Fuel reprocessing, weapons production plants. Reports potential health effects associated with radiation exposure of children living in proximity. They basically describe it as a biological weapon. Radioactive fallout. It's a biological weapon. So, pro-nuclear, I got to go back to 2018 for a minute. Pro-nuclear activists is a nuclear physicist, by the way, win a landslide electoral victory in Taiwan. This is hang. They should, if it's legal to hang in Taiwan, The guy with the white shirt on should be hung. What he done to the country of Taiwan is nothing short of sedition. It was evil, what he'd actually done. I'll show it to you with the help of James Hansen. In a surprise victory, Taiwan voters on Saturday decisively rejected the government's phase out of nuclear power. But that was a campaign. He's on a food strike there. Pro-nuclear activists in Taiwan shouted and shed tears. Now, they had a referendum.
When I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this, or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented. The ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and IRPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. IRPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own US NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known, it's
United Nations, IRPA is United Nations, the IAEA is United Nations, UNSCEAR is United Nations. They have just this incredible group, and they have controlled debates where they're all the same organization, which is Eisenhower called them the military-industrial complex. Yeah, my apologies, we kind of lost audio that time. What else is new around here? There's always something. As Taiwanese pro-democracy activist, the pro-democracy activist is a nuclear physicist who went on a hunger strike in order to import food from Japan, from the nuclear wasteland, into Taiwan. He went on a hunger strike. Every parent in Taiwan should try to sue him in court for what he done. Every parent, minimum, should try to sue him. So, pro-nuclear is James Hansen. So we're going to get to the story shortly. I'm just trying to kind of build a picture for those who are not aware. And this is from Michael Schellenberg at Forbes. Forbes is revoltingly pro-nuclear. It'll kill everything. Just get the uranium stocks to go up a couple of pennies. Now, he didn't really go on a hunger strike. Top scientists urge nuclear referendum. So, climate scientists, now you got to look at who the hell James Hansen actually was. Let me just do that because hopefully I can do it. Because we had to reset. There it is, most of it. I can see this is going to be a disaster over the next month for me. We got to redo the archive. Hang on, we're almost there. We'll come back to James. This is James Hansen. He's best known for his congressional testimony, his 15 minutes of fame in 1988. He was working for NASA. And he promotes nuclear power, by the way, with perpetual lies. So he says that the warming was caused by accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and not a random fluctuation. It was caused by nuclear testing because the so-called greenhouse gases, the carbon, everything else, that the emissions from gas, oil, and coal don't pulse energy every second, and they don't travel very far from their source. They're very big particulates. And you can put 2 million man-made atoms that each one pulses energy at the speed of light every second for millions of years on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. And they can travel right around the world, as I'll show you coming up. His testimony was pivotal, turning point in the history of global climate change, and marked the official beginning of the global warming policy debate. That was the beginning of this so-called global warming mantra. He was down there to get an award for promoting not climate change, but nuclear power. He was on a hunger strike, he claimed, but nobody can prove he actually was on a hunger strike. He's a nuclear physicist, and he wanted to put nuclear power and food from the nuclear wasteland on the referendum, and he succeeded, despite the fact that the government didn't want anything to do with it. But because of hunger strikes and antiques and propaganda, they co-opted all the bus stations and the subways and train stations throughout Taiwan for weeks before the referendum, handing out propaganda. That's how they won the referendum for nuclear power to be continued. But the food referendum was run by the people who said, we don't want food from a nuclear wasteland. But 2 years later, that ran out. And so politicians, instead of having another referendum, just took a trip to Japan, shook some hands, and removed the restrictions. It's so evil, it just doesn't even seem like it can be possible. In response, top climate scientists, including Scumbag James Hansen, leading environmentalists from around the world, sent an open letter to Taiwanese president urging that she allowed a nuclear referendum to go ahead. So this is outside interference, right? Oh, I turned the volume down. Hang on, let me see maybe if that makes any sense. I forgot that was there. This is him there, Taiwanese nuclear physicist.
I'm beginning to think there'll be no forced mating at all.
In response, Hansen and then went there and urged she allowed a nuclear referendum to go forward. Coincidentally, how is this coincidentally? Hansen landed in Taiwan and at the same time to receive the prestigious Tang Award, which is known as the Asian Nobel Prize, and each prize comes with $1.34 million cash for promoting nuclear. Over the last several years, he became one of the most high-profile advocates of nuclear power in the world. And his solution to climate change was more nuclear power. Of course, nuclear power is why we got climate change. Okay, so flash ahead. Taiwan lifts Fukushima food ban as it looks to Japan for a trade pact support. If you're looking for corruption, you came to the right place, obviously. So a couple of politicians is all it all took. It wasn't like the whole parliament or something. It was a couple of politicians engineered it, same as Fang done, for the nuclear physicists in Taiwan, for getting it on the referendum ballots to keep nuclear power and providing the nuclear students. Another thing to put, before I get into this, another thing to put into the equation is Taiwan, when they wanted a nuclear dump, they had moved all the natives to Orchard Island. And so they went to the natives and asked the natives, could they put a canning factory on their island? And the natives were like, say, that's great. And they said, well, you're all going to get a stipend, like a monthly check. And they put a nuclear waste dump there, pretended it was a canning factory for salmon and tuna. The nuclear industry, after Fukushima melted down, had 2,000 nuclear students spam the internet, and we don't know for how long, but it came out a couple of years ago, I think it was 2017, that they had 2,000, all the nuclear students in the universities were encouraged to go out and spam the internet and downplay the adverse side effects of nuclear. And so no matter which way you look at it, the Taiwan nuclear industry is despicable. It's a murderous, hateful industry. It hates its country. It hates its children. It hates its future. It's doing everything it can to destroy it on top of that. It's doing, and it can do an insignificant amount. They lifted the Fukushima food ban earlier this year so they can join a trade pact with Japan. So the food ban was because of radioactive fallout. They kept growing food in the nuclear wasteland. And Fang went into a hunger strike in order to ship the food in. It didn't work. 2 years later, when the referendum, because it was only validated for 2 years, was up, these same engineers of diseases and misery for their country just done it with a handshake and removed the restrictions. So they decided it's best to poison everybody in the country so corporations can have a free trade, not a free trade, but a trade organization. It's surreal that people like that actually exist on our planet. It's surreal. Decision will help smooth the way for Taiwan's bid to join the CPTPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, cabinet spokesperson said. But the Taiwanese now have no idea what's what. Of course, Taiwan had to ship food back many, many times because it slipped into the country illegally and was too radioactive to consume and was either disposed of, put on Orchard Island, which actually I don't think they use Orchard Island anymore, do they? I think that the natives sued them for 20 years or something and finally won. It took them decades to win, to get rid of their canning factory that was actually a nuclear dump, disguised as a canning factory. That's what you're talking about, the nuclear industry in Japan, folks, or Taiwan. Another interesting thing about Taiwan was Taiwan had ordered people to stay home, get rid of their clothes, and get showers because of the radioactive fallout from Japan. That's a staggering statement right there. That wasn't the nuclear industry that caused that. that was the parliament that caused it. They were immediately infiltrated after that, so that could never happen again. So here's the story. Cold War era cesium. Cesium. Again. They're claiming that cesium is the only one, and they've been doing this for how long now? 60 years of these studies we cover? It's really quite the betrayal, isn't it? It's so bizarre that this industry still exists. It has no right to exist. At some point, the entire planet is going to demand that these people be stuffed in a shed on some island and napalmed, like they did to every community in North Korea. Curium, by the way, is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod. Curium. And you need lead shielding for curium 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. Let that sink in for a minute. You got all the daughters that are going to show up. That's what you're looking at there, all these daughters of each of these isotopes. Stunning, really, how big the lie actually is, see? Krypton, really? Superman, the Hulk, Spider-Man, many of these are created by the nuclear industry to brainwash your loved ones, the most vulnerable of your society, and yourself included, in increments over decades. Uranium is what the actual reactors run on, and plutonium, not cesium. Americium, neptunium, strontium. So Japan is only right there. Taiwan is right here. There's zero possibilities that no radiation landed there. It's zero. It landed worldwide, as you'll see coming up. The study found that the decay of the radioactive particle found at low concentrations at 200 meters to 400 meters deep in the seas around Taiwan suggested they were from 1958 to 1962 in a 4-year period, despite the fact that weapons testing went on for decades. No FUKUSHIMA link. No FUKUSHIMA link. Curium is the melter reactor core. Curium is the isotope that is the biggest byproduct after the fuel has gone through a chain reaction. South Korea also closed 130 schools, which is behind Japan, right? But Taiwan sent people home, told them to stay inside and get rid of their exterior clothing. We got a poll tonight. Did Fukushima radioactive fallout reach Taiwan? Because the study is claiming that it didn't. It's surreal that there is people out there producing studies like that, right? So just inhaling one hot particle can cause a cancer. So Cold War era nuclear weapons tests caused 1,000 times higher cesium concentrations of Kuroshio current in wastewater And then using the word leakage, and using the word wastewater. And so that's how they want to deceive you, is make you think that it only was in the ocean, that it wasn't airborne. The bottom right-hand corner right here is 19-day plume model. Taiwan is right there. Now, this is only 19 days. The plume gets thicker and bigger every single day, right? Cold War nuclear weapons testing caused 1,000 times higher cesium. And of course, what about all the other uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontiums, curium isotopes? The Kuroshio current, that wastewater leakage, will challenge that assertion. That's the ocean currents. Again, using the word wastewater is ludicrous. It implies deception immediately. It's a dishonest and deceitful connotation. Leakage. So they're claiming the Kuroshio current goes up the coastline towards Japan, therefore Japan radiation couldn't get there, despite the fact that it absolutely unequivocally airborne was brutal. They ordered people to stay home, for God's sakes, and get rid of their external clothes. This is a model produced by Germany based on 6 years. Sorry about that.
May be worse than thought. Studies from last year indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German Marine Research Institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
I'm going to play this video of Patrick Clausen. He's with the Washington Institute. And he's going to tell you, and I put in, hopefully I did in that one, yeah. I put in the pictures and that to help articulate what he's talking about. He wants to go to war with Iran, but it's hard to see how the current president of the United States at that time can get him in a war with Iran. And so at the end of it, he said it's best if somebody else starts the war with Iran. It's what he says in between of how they got the war in World Wars and Vietnam and everywhere else by somebody else starting the war. And because nobody's ever held these people accountable, it might never stop. It can only stop if there's an incentive for not to be evil. And it perfectly describes what's happening with Taiwan and this story. I'm going to play that for you. It's a very short video.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
And apologies. My nostrils gave out on me again because of the flu. Let's keep her rolling here. from Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant following a March 2011 nuclear core meltdown. You had to go somewhere else to find the word nuclear core meltdown, which implies it was a single reactor. Japan's meltdowns were 4 reactors, and these were huge reactors, significantly larger than Chernobyl. And at the top of each of the building, because you don't have a repository anywhere worldwide, let alone Japan, was decades of reactor cores stored in pools. They were also incinerated. Reactor 1 and Reactor 2 reactors, when they melted down, it's assumed that they went down into the earth and hit the water tables at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature and detonated, splitting the earth in multiple places down there. And the steam that's coming up is lethal doses at 10 sieverts an hour. 3 sieverts is a lethal dose. And so the whole site at times disappear. So core meltdown with no S. And completely dishonest to put that there. It's completely dishonest. It's 100% on purpose. Just like Patrick Clausen. That's reactor 1. Now they put a Kevlar sarcophagus around it for 5 years, and then they took it off after 5 years because the sarcophagus now was so radioactive. They couldn't get near the site, that part of the site. They still can't today, right? It'll be like that for 1,000 years. Meltdown, so that's 2 reactors confirmed, and the fuel pools were lost. There's just multiple reactor cores. This is reactor 3, over there was reactor 4. I mean, they're obviously lost. So to claim meltdown, because these little omissions are extremely important when you're talking about, and Taipei Times, of course, is an external group business, and they carry out sedition against Taiwan all the time. So I got lemon slices rather. And I got yogurt here, and I'm going to hope this calms down my throat for a while. Yeah, that makes a big difference. My apologies. Now, here's the remains of reactor 3. So that's equal to 6 or 7 reactor cores, because the fuel pools were at the top of the building full of reactor cores. The same as this one here, which was reactor 4. So they had, this is the reactor core, and they put it in the pool. Another reactor core, put it in the pool. This is decades of reactor cores and putting them in the pools because you don't have a repository for them. Put it in the pool. And so they're boiling off all day long into your communities. The same thing for Taiwan. It's an insidious amount of radiation vented all day long into your communities. Worldwide, the majority of nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, and then that food then is shipped to your supermarket so they can get you all over the country. And that helped. Let's keep going here. So when a core meltdown, instead of putting multiple nuclear reactor cores melting down, they put core meltdown. It's completely dishonest. And it's dishonest because, and this is important because there's no exaggeration to say that the fate of Japan and the entire world depends on number 4. Number 4 is the remains you see over there. And so I showed you other lies that Taiwan has perpetrated upon the country, like Orchard Oil and nuclear dump they said was a canning factory. I'm going to play this clip of, this is just 4 of the medias, major medias worldwide, pretending they're on top of the fuel pools in Fukushima Reactor 4. It's surreal that this is not public knowledge worldwide.
Where I was standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
So they're pretending they're on a building that don't actually exist, which meant that CBS, BBC, ABC in Australia, CNN, and just hundreds and hundreds of other medias had to participate in the lie. You couldn't just get the so-called journalists, the revolting journalists, to perpetrate the lie. You had to get the consent of the videographers, the editors, producers, the entire studio, because there was no dissenting voices. There was no academics from any discipline that come out and asked the question of, hey, wait a second. There was no scientists, there was no activists. It's stunning, and you won't see that picture anywhere because I put that together. Nobody else has ever done that. A Taiwanese study published last month in the Marine Pollution Bulletin, who, instead of getting a peer reviewed and saying this was nonsense, of course there's other isotopes and from Fukushima, published it. You see the people that wrote the story and spread the propaganda on top of that. A Taiwanese study. The heavily radioactive particles were for the first time. Now, I showed you earlier, they told people to stay home and get rid of their get rid of their clothing and get showered. The first time detected. So, like, the idea is to say that it never reached it at all, and that because the controversy going on right now with the propaganda about the tanks, which is a total deception. They've been dumping it, and it's been hemorrhaging into the Pacific Ocean and airborne for 11 years. You can't contain it. They tried ice walls, they tried fences, they tried pumping it around the station. And why would you build an ice wall instead of a real wall? Every facet of the story was, no, if that works, we can't kill the planet. Let's do something that can't work. I got to take some more yoga. My apologies. I've been sick really bad for almost a week. In the last couple of days, I'm coming around. Still, last night was the first night in 6 days. Well, since last Friday. I didn't wake up every half an hour and have to run into the bathroom. And didn't suffer all day long. Today's sporadic, right? But tonight, once you start talking constantly for a while, it starts to get the better of you. We'll get through it. Detected in the currents at depths from 200 to 400 meters. Said lead author, Arthur Chen, a research chair professor, figures, right? A professor's job is to cut your throat. 99% of the times, they're going to be 99 out of 100 professors are there to cut your throat. and the National Yat-sen University Department of Oceanography. I know that sounds crazy, so bear with me. Everything sounds crazy until the truth shows otherwise. Well, we'll show you the truth. I'm not going to drag you all the way down to crazy. So, comparisons of professors worldwide, there's not that many. But there's an exceptional amount of them convicted of hideous crimes and sometimes silly crimes, right? Convicted of raping a 13-month-old baby, professors. Rape professors. DUI for the third time, professors. Falsifying retirement assets. Attempted theft by swindle. Sex crimes, professors. Ivory League professor. I can't remember where he's from. Convicted in his wife's death. Is freed. Professor convicted of exposing himself to multiple women. Convicted of poisoning their wives. Convicted of fraud of $700,000 from NASA. As long as James Hansen got his kickback, he doesn't care, right? Convicted of spying. Convicted of arms exports violations. Harvard Medical School psychiatrist. Sex for grades. Of sharing technology. And child porn. There's a lot of child porn professors. My goodness, that was a total surprise. Not really. Indian American professor convicted of defrauding students. MIT professor convicted of staging his own shooting. Another Harvard professor convicted of stealing $600,000 from a Hong Kong jeweler. Florida State professor convicted of embezzlement. Convicted of torturing his wife. Sex for grade in Singapore professor. Convicted in grant fraud cases and defrauding national science foundations and the students and first-degree murder and faking vandalism. Jewish professor convicted for marketing child porn. And the list just goes on and on and on. It's really something. So back to this story. So when you hear about research professor in Taiwan, you should never automatically give these people a pass. That's a serious mistake. Chen, the perpetual lawyer, who last month became a fellow at the American Geophysical Union, conducting the research from 2018 to last year in collaboration with the Radiation Monitoring Center. Of course, Taiwan, disgusting Taiwan, who spammed, the nuclear students spammed the internet. So you know his students were spamming the internet. National Taiwan University, National Taiwan Ocean University. In other words, their job is to screw Taiwan. If that don't make you lose faith in humanity, what will? So he got his special fellowship. That's his money, see? Just take everything out of the study and leave it blank. We'll put in what we want. The study did not find any Cesium-134 produced in Fukushima. That's a 2-year half-life, by the way. 11 years later. It riles me to see it. And it shouldn't, because we covered around 60,000 of these studies over the last decade. Like actually physically covered it on live shows. I must have looked at several 100,000. You can't cover it all because there's so many lawyers pinging for the nuclear industry. It's just bizarre. But what's going on is they captured the government. They captured key positions in the governments, particularly for money. They've captured the universities, and they captured the medias and the regulatory agencies. And so they control most countries worldwide, particularly with nuclear. And they're trying to control every other country, and they're very successful. I don't know if I've ever seen them fail. North Korea, maybe, where they can't get a foothold. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan starting April the 6th, and people should stay home and immediately take, or immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminants if they're outdoors. That's an amazing statement. But no, Chen says no. Nothing from Fukushima made it here. So he's working in tandem with Japan, right? That university is working in tandem with Japan to smooth the way for the genocidal radioactive food from the nuclear wasteland. Did not find 134. What about uranium, plutonium, and americium, neptunium, and strontium, and curium? And the thousands of other fission products, sir? His name should be Charlie Chan, because that would make sense. Which was a longer half-life of 30 years for 137, was found in concentration below the levels that can cause harm. It said, creature said, cesium from the nuclear core meltdown. Not meltdowns. Like the volume, this was the biggest. We've never seen multiple nuclear reactors and fuel pools melt down in history. Publicly anyway. Who knows if it happened before. The industry is completely genocidal of all species, omnicidal. This was released into the Pacific Ocean, was mostly transported by currents to water off the U.S. West Coast. Again, ignoring the airborne radiation. Every step of the way, they ignored the fact that airborne radiation really actually exists. This is a model from France based on 16 days of radioactive fallout. Well, Dana, where's Taiwan to? And Taiwan's right here. Or right here, rather. Well, this model's only 16 days. Give it another day, and all this is covered. Did I mention that they had to stay home because nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan? So for him to claim nothing from Fukushima showed up when there's no way that nothing from Fukushima could show up. There was no way that could not happen. He's probably raping puppies as we're talking right now. Was released into the ocean, mostly transported by currents to water off the U.S. So despicable, isn't it? Let me play that model again for you, Chen. Somebody should test his chin one of these days. Like his brother or his sister or his mother or his father. Well, he should be arrested and put in jail for the rest of his life producing studies like that. And at hard labor for the rest of his life. Or sent to Fukushima, actually. This was the release into the Pacific Ocean, was mostly transported to the West Coast United States. Cesium from the core meltdown. It's unreal. However, a small amount of cesium might have been captured, which flows off to Taiwan's east coast and back to the maritime environs of Japan. It's speculated the substance could appear off northeastern Taiwan, where waters from the deep sea rise to less than 20 meters below the surface, posing a contamination risk to algae and other marine life, he said. And it means that fish caught in these waters might contain a higher concentrations of just cesium, which might affect human health. And the level of the decay in the samples suggests the vast majority of the cesium residue found near the Taiwan coast originated from 1958 to 1962. That's 60 years ago. So Japan paid him a lot of money. We got Dana calling in. Hang on, Dana. Make sure I get the speakerphone on. I screwed up last week. Hi, Dana. This is Dana Nasana, folks. You hear me, Dana?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Dana. I hope you get better.
Thank you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. They pulled the tooth out of my mouth today, so I just can't talk that well. So say hi, and everybody shouldn't worry about it or not. Just call in. It's no big deal. We're the only ones that actually realize that Fukushima is dangerous. Everybody else says, oh, it happened 12 years, 11 years ago. It's done. It's done.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
See, and that's not very hard, right? Yeah. I appreciate it. Okay, Dana, thank you, my friend. Hugs for you, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Yeah, take care, my friend. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
So that was your moderator there, Dana Nasana, as we call him. That's not his real last name, but that's the one that he's sticking to. Obsolete Optics should call in. He's never called in. I don't know how long. I got to eat some more. I try to get my throat to calm down here so I can finish out the show. It's all good. It's Thursday's last show of the week. I just want to get, as long as I get through this story, I'll be happy. So let's just run through the rest of it. You can call in to the show. It's the Nuclear Scumbag show, that is. At 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406, right? And Dana Nasana's was less than a minute, basically. And he just nails it on the head. Boom, here, take that. And away he goes again. You got to love it, right? Because that's effective. And it kind of breaks up the stream a little bit, too. So it's really cool. And not the nuclear disaster in Japan. So everybody should be writing letters to whatever university he got his degree at and ask them to rescind his degree, and that his students should get their money back and have to go get re-educated. Because he's a dishonest and disingenuous and despicable creature. He's not a person, he's a creature. He's putting his entire country at risk by this study so he can get a paycheck. The ultimate lowlife, the ultimate scum, originated from 1958 to 1962. So obviously Japan got a big stick up his butt. Yeah, there were a period of intense nuclear weapons tests by the U.S. and the Soviet Union. But to claim that Fukushima was insignificant, you wouldn't say that to my face, would you? Would you? Would you? Could you? The test also offered an alternative explanation for the presence of tritium. Piece of shit, eh? What a piece of shit to say that. I apologize. What a despicable human to say something like that. What a disgusting parasite to say something like that. What a revolting, despicable, hateful scumbag to suggest that the tritium that gets found off Taiwan is probably from the hydrogen bombs. All professors should, you can't take a chance anymore. Just fire all of them, start again. And everybody that got educated by those professors should have to be recertified. Or we can't have a future. Your children can't have a future. Taiwan, with people like him, Taiwan has no future. He's making sure Taiwan has no future. So he can be a fellow with that group. And he even allowed his picture to be posted. Imagine how evil he actually is. Imagine a puppy screaming as he rapes him. Fukushima, Taiwan fallout. Abandoning nuclear power would leave the island more vulnerable. Wall Street Journal. Meddling in other countries because it's nuclear. Taiwan's perfect for tidal energy, geothermal energy. The problem is Taiwan's has been rocked by serious earthquakes. Like holy shit earthquakes. Ripped cities apart. And, you know, when they told the people on Orchard Island that they were going to put a canning factory there, the nuclear industry, universities, and they put a nuclear dump there. That tells you that the industry is completely evil. It's 100%. And who's going to hold them accountable? It took over 2 decades for the natives to reverse that, despite the fact that it was completely illegal and deceptive. Let's see what Jesus is saying. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you. Fukushima's Taiwan fallout. Protesters after Fukushima, because there was so much radioactive fallout. I got South Dakota calling in. Hang on there. I got to get you on the speakerphone. Because I screw up sometimes. Don't put people on speakerphone. Hello?
Hey, Dana, this is Don Walters, Don Vincent.
Oh, hi, Don.
Thought I'd call
Good
in.
stuff. Awesome.
I very seldom talk to you. The first time I ever talked to you, I made fun of the proctologist that you had in your site.
It's appropriate.
I'm such an amateur, but I just wanted to talk to you in person once, and I'll call back again. But
sure.
Everybody should take 1 minute to call Dana and wish you a better day tomorrow. You sound about like I felt yesterday, and I hope you're feeling better, man.
Thank you.
Do.
Yeah.
Take care. We'll talk again soon. I wish I had more to contribute, but I'm all ears tonight, like usual.
That's so awesome, Don. We appreciate it. Thank you for calling in, my friend.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Good stuff. I'll put your name in my list here. Thank you, Don. I cut him off a little too soon. Sorry, Don. Not used to people calling in. Got me all flustered here and confused. I'm doing way better than I was a couple days ago. That's the way it goes, man. Not doing a show because I'm sick doesn't work for me. It might work. I shouldn't probably do the show if I'm coughing and hacking constantly, but if I'm only coughing and hacking every 5 or 10 minutes, that's pretty good. That's good enough. The island's 3 nuclear power plants have operated safely for decades. No, they haven't. The fuel pools were hemorrhaging into the community all day long. It's worse than in many senses. Because the emissions from the fuel pools, which has already gone through a chain reaction, according to the EPA in the United States, are 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And children, particularly girls and women, are extremely 4 times more vulnerable than males are and boys. That's a shocking revelation too. But the protests back after Fukushima in Taiwan were awesome. Everybody remembers that, I bet. Yeah, still alive and kicking. It's the same as hacking. So, anybody's power plant anywhere on the planet having an event, a major meltdown, summed up really well here. It is no exaggeration, it really isn't, to say that the fate of the world, in Japan, and the whole world depends on the number 4 reactor. Now, the number 4 reactor was long gone at this stage, but that connotation is not something you want to ignore. Yeah, my throat's giving out on me. Oh, let's finish it up anyway. As most people know, we celebrated my birthday yesterday. My first time I ever took my birthday off. That was kind of weird. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more here to get through, and I can make that for a bit. And we'll just we'll call it a show. I just wanted to come out and challenge the study because it's showing up everywhere in the media today. And it's evil to do that. That's evil to put out that study. It shows that despite the fact they're wearing $5,000 suits and they have prestigious positions, they're the most dangerous creature on the planet. They're far worse than sharks and hyenas. They kill by the millions with the stroke of a pen. Senior Japan official: nuclear material flowing into the ocean is a grave matter, and the situation at Fukushima is deplorable. Fukushima plant is hemorrhaging radioactivity, and they don't know where it's coming from. And then the plumes, the airborne plumes you're looking at, that hit America at 450,000 times above detection levels. This was a model, and this covers Taiwan. This is a model based on 40 days. I got it at double its original speed. It's based on venting, but they never had any power to vent. The whole coastline was swept away. For over 500 kilometers of the coastline, well, 680 kilometers of coastline was impacted. 580 of it was turned like a big wood chipper. So when you look at all the endless amount of documentation, Chen's academic study doesn't hold any water. He's 100% a monster. He's like Mao and Pol Pot all wrapped up in the one. His job is to disarm the population of Taiwan, to make them complacent, and to make them vulnerable so Japan can poison them. He's a despicable human. He's despicable. It's disgusting what he done, and the university done, and the company, the fellowship that he just moved into, that organization. He's the farthest thing from a human. He's the last person that should be a professor. The very, very, very last person on this planet that should be a professor. And that all of his students should be recertified for his entire legacy. It's outrageous that the university hired him and the rest just like him. It's a hopeless, ridiculous betrayal. We got James there. Hang on, James. Last time you called in, we didn't have the speakerphone on the first kick. Hi, James. Go ahead. This is James Lucid, folks.
Yeah. I just wanted to, hope they get a good birthday and everything. And
I did, yeah. It was awesome.
I just hope that we live in these uncertain times with nuclear war looming more than ever.
Yeah, indeed.
And it's just, it's just great to, be part of this small family that shows up with your shows.
It is so,
we're all
man.
good people.
Yeah, it is so.
Yeah. So I'm just hoping that we all make it through this and see another show. And we wish the best for you, Dana. We all love you, you know that. But
Thank you,
thanks
yeah.
so much for pulling through. I know you're not feeling well, but I hope you get better next time we see you.
I do too, James. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good night. That's all I wanted to say.
God bless you. Love you, man. Thank you, James.
Love you too. All right, bye.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for Dana. Let's try a little bit of yoga and we'll close it down. James donated $260 for my birthday, and Colette donated $25. And so they told me to spend it on myself. And so remember a month or two ago I was talking about how desperately I needed a pair of boots, hiking boots for research, right? Well, I got the best I could find yesterday, and I wore them all day. They felt amazing. It was amazing, like it does, right? A good pair of boots, like it makes you feel so much. And the last ones were probably 5 years old, and they've been all along the coastline to Alaska multiple times. And so these are even nicer, and I didn't think that. They're just so comfortable. And I tried on probably 15 pairs yesterday. I went to the city. And so I was totally thrilled to finally get my hands, because that's not something I will normally can afford to buy. The money, we have too many things. I spent a couple hours a day because the brake pads showed up 2 weeks early. So I went out and it took me 2 hours to do one brake pad. I'm not sure if I'll do the other one tomorrow or Saturday or something, but we got one done. The shop wanted $90 to do it. And I got the tools to do it, so I went and getting the springs back in. My fingers are not as strong as they used to be. That was the killer, right? And so what happened was that particular brake shoe, a piece of it came off, and so that you can hear it rubbing sometimes when you're driving, right? It was very annoying. And anyway, I got that fixed today. I really felt good about that too. And I'm so happy. There's 3 people called in tonight. And that was a huge deal. So we're going to end the show on that note. I apologize for hacking, but that was the only way we can do the show. That came with the show, unfortunately. That's everybody knows since Sunday. I am doing better, obviously, though. I know it don't seem that way to some people, but I'm definitely doing better. And now that I cut out sugar and wheat and starch, potatoes and stuff like that, I'm definitely feeling better. And we're on the path to recovery. Get that music rolling in the background before I forget about it. But a shot of Johnny Walker. I got Johnny Walker. It's not that I don't drink, it's just I just don't bother with it. I haven't bothered with it for like 25 years. Once or twice a year I might have a beer or a shot. But yeah, it wouldn't hurt. Thank you, everybody. Obsolete's going to call in on Sunday. Yeah, you can call in anytime, sir. I appreciate it. I'll read everybody's comments after. And there's no sense stressing my voice. We made it through the show, so I'm super happy. It's not our typical long show, but we come out and we ran head on into Taiwan's despicable betrayal. And I hope the Taiwan Parliament holds that professor accountable and demands that he redact that fake study and that he return the money that he had for that study, because this is obviously fraud. He should be charged with fraud for producing the study. Yeah, and special thanks to Dana DeSana for moderating all the time. He doesn't have to, right? Because just being there is a deterrent on its own. But it's good to have someone there you can count on like that, right? And I appreciate it. And so my voice is just shot here. We'll see everybody Sunday, unless there's a major event in the next couple of days. But we'll see you Sunday. Let me see. Hugs for everybody. God bless everybody. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. A great weekend. Tell your loved ones you love them. You might never have another chance. We'll see everybody on Sunday. Have a great night and a great weekend, folks. And thank you all for the well wishes in the last video and this video for my birthday, my 60th birthday. So it actually means a lot to me. And I really appreciate it. It's hard to articulate, but I super appreciate it. See you, folks. Take care. Yeah, good night, everybody. We'll see everybody on Sunday. Take care, folks.